We've talked a little bit in the past about another variable type called a date. A date goes well beyond our primitive integers and floating point numbers and strings of characters and booleans. But a date is really just three variables packaged into one variable with a special meaning. It's an integer representing the year, an integer representing the month, and an integer representing the day. Three integers. How can one variable contain three different integers? So looking at this code, line 1 runs and just tells the computer how to interpret a date, and then line 2 runs, creating a variable named myDate and assigning it the value of today's date. That's what date.today does. Note that I called that a dot, and we're talking about dot notation. You'll see that more in a second. The variable myDate now has a value of date, and the date is a type that contains three integers: year, month, and day. We access each of those by calling the variable name dot the part of the variable that we're interested in. So if we want the year, we call myDate.year. If we want the month, we call myDate.month. If we want the day, we call myDate.day. Watching the code run, we see the result of this. When line 3 runs, the computer is asked to print myDate.year. So it goes and gets the value of myDate, which was today, and then grabs the year variable out of myDate and prints that. That's why we see 2016 over on the right. On line 4, it again looks up the value of myDate, but this time it asks for the month, .month. And so, sure enough, 9 is printed for September. On line 5, same thing. Look up the value of myDate and get the day, which sure enough was 23. We're actually also using dot notation up here when we call date.today. Date is a library which we use kind of like a variable, and today is a part of that library. So calling date.today means get the today part of the library date, or get the today part of the variable date. What variables or methods are available is dependent on the type of the variable that you're working with. For example, it makes sense to ask the year, month, and day of a date, but it doesn't make sense to ask for the hour, minute, or second of a date. There is no logical answer to the question, what's the current time on May 15th? However, if we had a time object, which is what we show here, it would make sense to ask for the hours, minutes, and seconds. When this code runs, line 1 tells the code how to interpret a date time. Lines 2 and 3 are comments, so they're ignored. And line 4 gets the current time now and assigns it to the variable current time. You could ignore for now why there are 2 date times listed here. That's just kind of an oddity of this library. Because current time has the type time, it makes sense to ask for the hour, minute, and second of current time. So line 5 runs, gets the value of current time, and then grabs the hour and prints the hour. It then does the same thing for current time.minute and current time.second to get both the minute and the second associated with current time. So it makes sense to ask for the hour, minute, and second of a time, but it wouldn't make sense to ask for the hour, minute, and second of a date. As we mentioned before though, don't worry too much about dot notation or the syntax that we're showing here. We won't really get into it in depth until we get to object-oriented programming and a little bit when we get into data structures in Unit 4. For now, we're mostly showing it to you so that when you see it, you can kind of infer what it means. The syntax always starts with a variable name, followed by a dot, and then the part of that variable that we're interested in getting. So you can almost think of it as an apostrophe. Current time.second is like asking for current times second.